I'll call the meeting to order of the monthly library board meeting. Today is August 23rd, 2021. This is the regular meeting. Angie, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Biederman.
Present.
Mr. Bixby.
Present.
Dr. Machado.
Present.
Ms. Payne.
Present.
Reverend Robinson.
Virtual.
Judge Salinas.
Present.
And Ms. Tribble.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
All right, we'll move on to the public comment and communications portion of our meeting. At every library board meeting, we open with a time for public comment. We welcome feedback from the public about our library, our Indianapolis library. And this is a time when the public may address the library board. If there are several of you representing the same group, please select a spokesperson. Please do not repeat the same comments someone else has offered. Please note also that this public comment time is not the appropriate forum for commenting on matters related to alleged employee misconduct. Any such matters should be brought promptly to the consideration of the library administration, where matters can be properly addressed in compliance with established library policies and procedures. A 5-minute time limit will be allowed for each speaker. Each speaker should give their full name and their address. First one is Jane Walters. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is James Wolford. I'm the branch manager of the West Indianapolis Branch Library. I want to start by saying that I'm here only representing myself. I'm not speaking for any of the committees, councils, or organizations that I am a part of. While I cannot speak for others, I know that my thoughts and concerns are not alone. Long have we known that the systemic racism within the Indianapolis Public Library system, it is for those reasons and other problematic issues such as sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, ableism, and more that the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer position was created. It's outrageous that when someone is brave enough to speak up, that the president of the board tries to silence them. That when people have concerns, they're told to not go directly to the board, regardless of whether this is COVID concern in the opening of branches or anything else. Is it any wonder that most people stay quiet and suffer in silence? Is it any wonder that more people simply leave the system rather than speak up? When this is the sort of treatment that a respected member of the community suffers, it isn't hard to understand why the cancer of systemic racism has stuck for so long in the veins of a public entity that proudly proclaims, "We welcome all" on its doors. I still find it baffling that the entire library board itself has gone through the implicit bias of racial equity training. While there are staff members who suffer from the bias and inequity on a daily basis who have attended these meetings. They've been required to attend these trainings. Over the course of my 7 years here, I have seen well-qualified individuals driven away from the system in one way or another. I have seen their hard work overlooked. I've seen them pushed to the side so someone else can be in the spotlight. I know people that have fled the system to escape the toxic environment that lurks beneath the shiny surface and devours the spirit of marginalized people. So why do I stay? I stay to fight for change. As I have been fighting for since I first pushed my way into the system with a library technical assistant degree that wasn't even seen at the time as enough. Something I recently had to point out again that it was. I fought behind the scenes to bring about changes to the policy to protect trans and gender diverse patrons and staff so that I and others could safely come out and stay in a job that we love dearly. I stay to make an impact on the communities and people that we are often overlooked and underappreciated. I stay so that I can be the person that I needed when I was younger. To be the mentor to others that others have been for me. I stay to be a voice for those that cannot speak for themselves or are too afraid to do so. I stay because we are stronger together. I've had multiple people prior to this that came to me in regards to the petition that was circulated. They wanted to sign it, they supported it, but they feared for their jobs. They feared the repercussions. They've seen it happen to others. I've had positions to fill in my branch on a regular basis, and every time I have reached out to multiple friends to see if they knew anyone up and coming that needed a foot in the door. It was my own method of trying to reach a more diverse selection of candidates. Every single one of them replied the same way. I would send them to work for you, but not for IndyPL. Everything that has been going on and that continues to go on has poisoned the well. When I told a few people that I planned to speak up at the board meeting, there were a number of them that asked why. Why would I do that? Why would I risk that? The short answer is, I have to, in good conscience. I cannot sit idly by while others fight for us all. When I came out publicly, there are people still here that had my back. They supported me. They fought for and beside me. This is the least that I can do, and my only regret is not speaking out publicly sooner. In a system such as ours, there needs to be true accountability and change. The members of the board nor the CEO cannot and should not be immune to this. If anything, they're in a position in which their actions must be held to a higher standard. There comes a point when the efforts to course correct and defend create more harm than good. There comes a point when, if you truly care about the future of something, you need to step aside and let someone else take the helm. Not only does the staff of the Indianapolis Public Library deserve an equitable and diverse work environment, but the Indianapolis community does as well. Otherwise, the recent changes to IndyPL's mission statement is nothing but show. I could demand and rant, but I'm just going to ask. I ask that you listen to the people. Listen to the workers. Listen to the public. Really and truly listen. And then do what is best for us all, even if it's hard, even if it means stepping aside. Thank you.
Give me to switch to my current glasses. It is a truth universally acknowledged that white people who need to listen openly instead of reflexively to complaints of racism must be in need of a white person to tell them to listen. My name is Sandra Mitchell. I grew up on the East Side in the Warren branch. As a queer teen, I hung out on the steps of the Central Library with the other queer teens in the 80s, whose parents would at least always allow us to go to the library. As an adult, I'm an award-winning writer of books for teens and tweens and an editor of anthologies for teens. And I have donated my time, my programming, and my money to the Indianapolis Public Library. Last year, I won the Indiana Authors Award, and I granted my award money to the Indianapolis Public Library's Chris Gonzalez collection. My name is on your walls. What I'm about to say to you is nothing you haven't heard before. Bree Flannelly told you. Mahassan Amin told you. Stephen Lane told you. Molly Beaumont told you. The community that uses this library is telling you. And as a matter of fact, I have told you. When I saw a security guard at Central Library mistreat a homeless patron, a Black homeless patron, I wrote a letter to the manager at the time. He never responded. In the tradition of my white forebears, I took my complaint to the next manager, or in this case, Miss Needus, whom I had met on several occasions by virtue of being an author who has done multiple workshops and appearances at IndyPL. I got a formal reply to that email. As far as I am aware, nothing changed at Central Library. the response I got was underwhelming. The leadership on this board seems to be fixated on Ms. Flannelly's complaint and not what this board did to her during the reading of her complaint. You fail to understand that silencing her, speaking over her, and speaking down to her in and of itself was racist behavior. It was emblematic of the experiences of employees and patrons of color while employed here. I'm not here to tell you my experiences. I'm here to uplift the voices already speaking. I'm here because Bree Flannelly deserved to speak and be heard, because Mahasan Amin deserved to be compensated for expertise, because Stephen Lane should not have had to fight to have a Black librarian ahead of her time acknowledged, because Molly Beaumont should not have to provide her birth certificate to prove her ethnicity. The board leadership has done a lot, indeed too much talking about the things accomplished in this library under Ms. Davis's stewardship. But it appears now, even months later, you're still unwilling to listen to your own employees, patrons, and community. So I am here to exercise my white privilege, to elevate their voices, to ask you to stop talking and start listening. More than that, stop licking your own wounds and centering your own hurt feelings and hear what they are saying. For the record, all I have is a high school diploma. I am so far the least educated person to speak before you. So perhaps now the board leadership can refrain from interrogating Black women about their education and start interrogating their own biases. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Molly. I'm a current staff member. I'm not going to name my branch today because of some kind of conversation in here. I sent this email to the board yesterday along with our new interim. So I'm just going to read it out loud so we all know where at least I stand as far as going forward. Thank you for taking the time to listen to what we've shared with you in the past few months. I shared a few documents from our HR policy and proposed changes that I have made in regards to harassment and progressive discipline. These documents were created in preparation for internal interviews to support presentation work and DEI initiatives. These documents demonstrate the work that I'm currently doing in DEI efforts in my role as a librarian, aspiring to lead the system to change. Of course, the decision to implement said changes is not within my position of the library. However, I was advised to offer ideas to demonstrate my leadership skills. As previously stated by Dr. Murtada, there is an urgency in this process for internal climate review. As someone who has experienced harassment from both internal and external individuals, the urgency includes policy changes. Policy changes such as these will allow staff to feel more confident that they can come forward, knowing that the library supports them. In the past, there has been an avoidance to report report harassment to HR from management. This is problematic. Documentation and performance improvement plans are not put into place, and the harassment continues. The policy number 202 harassment statement reads, harassment occurs when a supervisor treats an applicant or employee differently. However, it must read when a staff member treats an applicant or employee differently. This change will allow for each staff person to be held accountable to another regardless of their position within the library. I state this because the proposed progressive discipline modifications include demotion, which can lead to frustrated and upset individuals treating colleagues with disregard after a demotion. Additionally, the change in policy also explicitly states harassment includes racism, sexism, homophobia, and/or any category within the LGBT+ umbrella, ableism, xenophobia, and/or any category within the POC immigrant community, and is not limited to aforementioned instances. This explicit statement better supports BIPOC staff who may already feel marginalized within their branch and should be in place until the library creates a BIPOC specific line similar to the transgender policy number 204. Furthermore, policy number 274.1, progressive discipline for same or related issues, states managers and/or supervisors consult with human resources throughout the disciplinary process. However, the addition to include the board was added to the proposed changes in the event that harassment comes from EC level management. Language in step 2 under 274.1 has also been modified to include will in lieu of may in regards to a performance improvement plan. This change is the urgency the library needs to weed out staff unwilling to adapt to IndyPL's commitment to racial equity. Additionally, step 3 eliminates may include suspension to read will include demotion. Again, this crisis we are in resonates more heavily with BIPOC. Our experiences are turned into jokes and or hate speech that still persist and is on par with the outcome of the 2016 election. Recently, a colleague shared a joke, which I asked not to be finished. However, said colleague completed the offensive joke, incorporating the BIPOC community into the punchline. Later that day, the same colleague made another joke about the Indians baseball team and subsequent name changing suit, or about the subsequent name changing. I'm not going to say what he said, it's so harmful. I've showed these incidents with HR. I reported one to management. I don't think it was enough. We need to go to HR for all of these. Thank you again for listening and taking the time to hear what we've been saying. These actions demonstrate your commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, which in turn helps to rebuild trust and confidence within the organization. You know, there's still work to be done, and I appreciate the steps that you are doing right now. But there's so much more to do. So thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Copeland. I'm the chair of the Department of Library and Information Science in the School of Informatics and Computing on the IEP. And I prepared a few words to say in support of Dr. Carla Murtada leading the library's climate improvement process. At one point, she had full support of the board. And at that time, she reached out to me as someone who teaches and researches in public libraries to work with her to develop a plan. We began work in June, and since then, she's received various mixed messages from the board, including requests for more information. Her plan centers on the staff and building their capacity for creating inclusive and socially just work environments to the mutual benefit of the library and the community served by the library. Her plan is a committee or community-based one that includes members of the library's Equity Council and community members that are dedicated to DEI work. This shared leadership approach increases the chances that there is someone on the committee that all library staff will feel comfortable sharing their perspectives on the library's climate plan. Her plan starts with healing that is needed to take place within the organization and seeks to empower it from there. It is impossible to make cultural change within an organization without building capacity for that change. Her plan does that and at no cost to the library. I challenge the board to find a third party that can deliver what she's proposed, regardless of cost. I've worked alongside her since June, and I've remained quiet and not sure when or how to speak. I feel her wanting to do the work, and in the way she wants to do it is a gift to the library and the city. She is a deeply brilliant leader as well as a leadership scholar. But even more impressive than all of her academic credentials is the ethic of care that underpins all that she does. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marianne Krupa. I am the manager of the Nora branch, and I'm here to cordially invite you to our 50th anniversary party on September 4th. So, there you go. We got everybody in order. And Reverend Robinson, I have yours here. Thank you. It's all day on Saturday. Yeah, I'll run down the order of events real quick. So it's 10 to 5. We'll have Cinnamon and Friends doing face painting and balloon art until 12:30. At 12 o'clock, we're going to dedicate our book tiles, as well as a portrait of Delia, who was the manager there for a long time, very beloved in the community. Then we will have pizza and a magic show. Then more pizza and and then to close out the evening or the day, at 3 o'clock, the Robert Coleman Jr. Trio will be performing. So he's the husband of one of our librarians who made our invites. So we hope to see you there.
You're gonna start like around 10?
Yeah, we're gonna have cookies for the kiddos in the morning and pizza throughout the day. So it'll be fun.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sign up, so I thought it was sign in. Classic instructions, mistake from the librarian.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I handed out at the meeting Friday item from one of our pages. Some of you were here. May I give you those who weren't here at the time? Yeah. John, this is out there. And I'm-
Okay, okay.
I'm here to talk about the $15 minimum wage that's being proposed on this budget, in 2022 budget. And I'm here to talk about the pages. You know, we've had Jackie and John have come to Central, and we've had a big discussion about the pages about this. And I just want to talk about how the last time we did a minimum wage increase, which was we did it to $13. The pages weren't included in that raise. And we're now thinking about doing a $15 minimum wage. And as far as we know, they're not included in that, but I believe there's some discussion about doing something to bring them up to a better wage. But that's mainly the reason why I'm here today. And a couple of things I like to say is that I'd like for us to do a survey to see exactly who our pages are, because there's talk about pages being students and retirees who are on pensions or who have Social Security. As a matter of fact, I have our page, one of our pages back here, Arthur Cuby is one of the pages that work at Central. So, I would like to see so we can get a truer picture of who our pages are, because there are some who might be in school and some who are really or use their salary to survive. One of the other things I put this on our Ask Me Facebook page, and I sent the question out to our other unionized libraries, and there is a position in Seattle Public Library that is specifically for students, and it says, the response from Ann from Seattle Public Library says, we actually have a position called student assistant that actually is for students. It isn't benefited, lasts no more than 3 years for each person, and offers 12 hours a week during the school year. Expandable during the summer, but brings in $15 an hour. They aren't represented because they are of the 3-year limit. So I'm hoping that we can I'd like to throw that out there, so maybe that could be something we can also look into as well. Because it is kind of deceiving, you know, they're on the salary schedule as a salary range, but you know, because they work part-time and they only work so many hours, they can never reach part-time or full-time status. So that 20,000 a year or whatever they have listed there is never reachable by any of them. So that's something that's kind of deceiving as well. And as we've also been in discussions about salaries, and our former HR director always mentioned that a person who works for 21 years can actually go to the top of their scale within 21 years. But at the same time, we find that other people are reaching past the mid-range and closer to the top in half or a third of that time. So those are the things that we're interested in kind of investigating more on, how those ranges are people are able to reach their range top faster than some of the others. So, so my whole idea here is that I hope that we can find a place in the budget for next year to address some of these issues. So we can also bring our pages whose work is very important. You know, not only do they just shelve books, they rearrange books. They're also involved in doing pick lists and other duties that some of our library clerks and people above them do as well. And the final thing I want to talk about is our cleaning staff. Our cleaning staff, I understand they are contract employees. I just want you to know that the person who was cleaning the libraries when they were during the pandemic with the 360 Clorox is making $8 an hour. Nobody in the library makes $8 an hour. And I think that I understand that we can't dictate what the contractor pays them, but their contract is up, I believe, at the end of this year. So I hope that when we are looking for vendors to do this job, that we consciously look at what they're paying their actual staff, because not only are they $8, they're not benefits. There's no benefits. So those are the two things I'm bringing up here. And also finally as far as the cleaning people, we used our operating budget a couple of years ago to compensate security guards for doing extra training. That came out of our operating budget, I believe. So I think that we can be creative and use some of our operating budget to help bring some of these $8 an hour cleaning people staff up to a better wage. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Stephen Lane. I'm a proud resident of the Hallville neighborhood and the Special Collections Librarian for the Indianapolis Public Library at Central Library. I handed out copies of a poem that one of our patrons gave in support of library workers that I want to read tonight. It's called Grace Under Fire. I come to the library and partake of the goodness. Resources abound that keep me from being useless. The old and the new in a marvelous confluence, time-honored books and computers' new influence. And then there are the people who guide my path, always so cheerful and so very glad. It seemed as though they couldn't do enough to make my efforts easy and never find things rough. When they answered my questions, they made it clear was no burden. They were happy to do it, of that I'm certain. Little did I know that just below the surface, their own burden loomed with a tragic purpose. A toxicity had spread that poisoned their lives. Hidden from view, it thrives and thrives. No patron ever knew of the contemporaneous pain that accompanied the kindness and the help that they gave. It must be to their credit that they never allowed misdirected anger into their fields of work to be plowed. I do not know what course the healing will take, but its origin will be found because it's not too late. The library staff can look to their own merit. They will find it in abundance with each other and share it. The noble purpose of the library shall prevail, and the troubles of the past won't even leave a trail. What goes around comes around, and kindness takes its turn, so the poison of the past we can only spurn. It is their essential goodness that will carry the day into a better future. I know they'll find the way. By T.A. Schuler.
Andrew, do we have any?
No, sir.
No. All right,
Point of order,
yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to give some feedback. Thank you all those who did offer comments to the board, from Jane Walters, Mitchell, Molly, Bowman, Andrew Copeland, Michael Torres, and Stephen. Poetry, by the way, was quite stirring. Just want to thank you. The library board takes very seriously this opportunity to listen, to listen, to listen, and to learn. So very much appreciated. And we are constantly on a journey to learn more and to be appreciative of the work that the patrons bring to us, but also so very important what the staff does in order to make sure the library is, just like this poem says, a place of welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Matalas, any other board member want to speak or have any comments? There's all right, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the executive session, regular and special session. First is A, executive session held July 26, 2021. The minutes are enclosed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the executive session held on July 26, 2001?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All right, any discussion on the matter? Seeing none. Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to item B, the regular meeting held July 26, 2021. The minutes are enclosed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 26, 2021? Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby, Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. I will now ask the board for consent to take an agenda item out of order and ask that we take up item 11 now. And I was told I can do this by voice consent. So do all approve amending, not amending, having the agenda to take item 11 out of order? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will now look at item number 11. This past Friday, the board approved resolution 44-2021, recognition of the service of Jackie Unitas and approval of employment separation. To the Indianapolis community, our library staff, and our community partners, the library board extends our gratitude for the ongoing cooperation and fulfillment of the library's mission. Together, this board is united and devoted to moving the Indianapolis Public Library forward in a way that benefits our community. Our public service to Indianapolis starts with the people who provide that service, library staff. It is for them and the patrons they serve that we fully commit to working toward a bright future in this important public institution. This will be a future marked by culture and system-wide practices that focus on racial equality, diversity, and inclusion throughout the library. And now I would ask the board to consider item number 11, which is resolution 45-2021. Is there a motion to approve, which is the appointment of an interim director and chief CEO? And the resolution is enclosed. Is there a motion to, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We have now appointed John Helling as, I forgot to say that, I apologize, folks. John Helling was the person in that resolution that we have just now named our interim director and CEO. Mr. Helling, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. I do just want to say real quickly, thank you to the board for the trust that they're showing in me. I want to express that I take that responsibility very seriously. And I want to say to everyone, my primary goal is to facilitate a smooth transition to the next CEO and set that person up for success. I plan to spend my time as interim building and rebuilding relationships, opening lines of communication, and creating trust to the extent that I can. The work that the public library does is incredibly important, and the many ways in which we can serve the community will continue in earnest throughout this process, of course. I hope to help create an environment where all staff of the library feels engaged and empowered. Structural racism is very real, and the library is no exception to that. We have a lot of work to do to improve, and the first step is to spend time listening to staff and centering the voices of people who have been harmed. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I can commit to include as many voices as possible as we all move forward. So again, thank you for the trust. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We move on to item 5. We're back to the course of the agenda. Finance Committee report, Chairman, Dr. Payne. I think you got about 90% of the agenda.
Yes.
Blow through it very fast. The first item is our treasurer's report. You guys have a copy in your packet, and so I won't go through much of it except to say that we're doing very well year to date. This is as of July, we received 25.6 million in revenue, which is about 56% of what we projected for the year. And then we've spent about 23.6 million so far, which is about 46% of our budget. Any questions on that report or anything that you want me to talk about further?
Just, and how does it compare to our spending in pre-COVID?
It's about in line with our spending pre-COVID. If you look on the next page of our,
Which page are you on
sorry, on your PDF, it's PDF page 23.
Okay.
So if you look at PDF page 24, it shows a chart that compares the last 4 years, or the last 3 years, year to date. You'll see that in our expenditures in 2021 are in line with 2018. 2019 looks like it's a spike, but there are a couple one-time expenditures that if you take out of the equation, it's right in line with 2019. So there were things like we spent money out of the operating budget for Brightwood, and we transferred some money to our library improvement reserve fund. But if you take those things out, we're right in line. Any other questions? If not, I would like to ask for your approval to submit this for audit.
The motion to accept the report of the treasurer for July 2021.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? First, motion to second discussion. Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carried. I will now convene a public hearing. I will adjourn the regular meeting and convene a public hearing. This is second consolidation public hearing on the amended and restated preliminary determinations and additional appropriations for the Glendale project and the Fort Bend project.
Yes, thank you. This is a reapproval for the both the Glendale and Fort Bend branch projects, as well as for the financing of those projects. These were previously approved in 2014. And of course, since then, costs have risen. But in addition to that, we've had more delays than we anticipated when these were approved in 2014. And then more recently, we've had just rapid rise in the cost of materials. So we've exceeded, the budget has exceeded our original approvals. And so these next 4 resolutions will ask for reapproval of those projects as well as authorization for the bond issuance. And the amounts of for the Glendale project is $14,850,000. And then for the Fort Bend project, $13,660,000. So I have Baker Tilly here as well as Barnes and Thornburg, Jeff Quackenbush, and Belvia Gray. And Belvia will come and do a presentation talking about our anticipated tax rates as well as our anticipated interest costs. And then we can get public comments and then we'll talk about the resolution.
Hi there. Good evening. Belvia Gray here with Baker Tilly. And yeah, okay, great. As EJ mentioned, this is the second hearing for the reapproval of the Glendale and Fort Bend branches. So I'll walk through this information. The board has already heard this information, so I'll work through it. A more abbreviated version. This slide shows the library's outstanding indebtedness with all of its current debt fully repaid by 2030. This slide 3 then shows the updated approvals for Glendale and Fort Bend. A couple of things I want to point out. One is, even though we're looking at updated borrowing amounts, because interest rates have really, they are much lower even than when the original approvals occurred in 2014. So we will still be able to maintain the original promises back in 2014, which were to maintain the library's tax rate to not exceed 3.18 cents. And so the other good news is that when the bonds were originally approved in 2014, we were looking at authorization of up to 15 years. Because of where interest rates are now and because of the growth in assessed value for the library, we're actually looking at repaying these bonds over 5 years. So a much shorter time frame, and like I said, keeping within the tax rates. And then this final slide really just shows these 2 projects pulled together into the library's debt service schedule.
So basically, you're saying that within 5 years, you're anticipating we can have this repaid.
Yes, both series of bonds.
Both series.
Yes. And that's really just a reflection of interest rates they're quite a bit lower than they were when the bonds were originally authorized. We were back in 2014, we were originally looking at these bonds being issued in the 2019, 2020 timeframe. So we were already estimating several years into the future. So we had assumed pretty conservative interest rates at that point in time in the 5% range. Well, interest rates now for a 5-year borrowing are, in the 1% range, right? So we're going to come in much, much lower. So that's, to the benefit of the library.
I want to incorporate some of the comments you made at the first presentation. One, this is not foreseen. A lot had to do with the pandemic, prices going up, but we're not the only entity in the area or in the country that's in the same boat. But the numbers indicate that it's going to be the same as far as our tax bracket, and the repayment timeframe is a lot shorter, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, fine. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make a comment with respect to this project and this motion before the board? Seeing none. Is there a motion to close the public hearing? Is there a second? All right, any comment on closing the public hearing Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call of the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Motion carries. The public hearing is adjourned and the regular meeting is reconvened. We now go to resolution 31-2021. Amended and restated preliminary determination of reimbursement of bonds resolution for the Glendale project. Asia?
Yes, so I have Jeff Quackenbush here from Barnes and Thornburg, and he's gonna explain the next couple resolutions. Resolution 31-2021 through 34-2021, and they all relate to Glendale and Copan.
Thank you, EJ. Good evening, Judge Salinas, members of the board. Holly, Jeff Quackenbush with Barnes and Thornburg. So tonight you have 4 resolutions with respect to Fort Bend and Glendale. I will go through each of them individually, and then if you have any questions regarding any of those, get to the motions for each one of them. Resolution 31-2021 is an amended and restated preliminary determination reimbursement and bond resolution for the Glendale branch. That incorporates all the financial information that's in the presentation this evening. That'll be a great, with one exception. While we are anticipating 5 years for repayment, we are authorizing up to 8 years potentially for repayment, just in case between now and the end of the year, which is when we're going to sell these bonds. If interest rates modify a little bit and go up, then we want to be able to have that flexibility. That would still have the interest cost that was presented here this evening, around 1.4 million as opposed to 4.1 million, which was originally contemplated back in 2014. And we'll still have no tax rate impact associated with it that will increase the tax. The resolution 32-2021 is the same type of resolution for the Fort Bend project with the same exceptions as far as the maximum repayment term being 8 years instead of 5 years as in the presentation. But would still have interest costs of no greater than 1.3 million versus 4.1 million. And would be for a term to pay out the Fort Bend bonds as well. Resolution 33-2021, back in 2014, you approved an appropriation of $10.4 million for that particular borrowing. Because we are now increasing the borrowing, we need to increase the additional appropriation for that, and that increases that up to $5 million for the appropriation. That appropriation process will need to go to the City County Council, just like any other appropriation you have in the library. Finally, resolution 34-2021 is the amended and restated additional appropriation for Fort Bend. That increases that additional appropriation up to be $14.6 million. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on any of these as you go through the motions, but those are the 4 resolutions that are for you. If you approve those this evening, we will be publishing a notice of preliminary determination for each project on Friday, August 27th. That period of time will run for 30 days. At the end of that period, if we're successful in not having requested a referendum on either of these projects, then we will immediately go to the City County Council for approval of these 2 financings and look to try and sell the bonds by before Thanksgiving and close sometime before Christmas.
Any questions or comments from the board? Take a moment for the time. We'll start with resolution 31-2021. There a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Motion second. Is there any discussion on resolution 31? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a
Just
call?
one quick
Oh,
one.
I'm sorry.
I want to thank you for giving us a sense of that 5 to 8%, but also understanding that it's going to be a very aggressive move to sell the bonds with Thanksgiving and Christmas and move that forward. We are very hopeful that that does happen.
Likewise.
All righty. Any further comments from the board? Angie, can we have a call to roll on resolution 31, please?
Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll go on to resolution 32. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comments on resolution 32? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby, Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Ed Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We'll move on to resolution 33. Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matrata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Ed Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Motion carries. Now resolution 34. Is there a motion to approve that resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matrata,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Ed Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to G. I will now convene a public hearing. I will now adjourn the regular meeting and convene a public hearing, the consolidated public hearing on additional appropriations of the 2021-2022 energy conservation and district-wide long-term capital maintenance equipping project and the 2022-23 energy conservation and district-wide long-term capital maintenance equipping project. EJ?
Yeah.
That's a long title.
Thank you. It is a long title. So in essence, these are two smaller bond issues. And what we've done in order to sort of supplement our operating fund is we've had these periodic small bond issues, and we're asking for approval for two of them at the same time so that we don't keep having to come back to you guys for these approvals. On your PDF page 57, you'll see what we have two series that we're asking for. One that we plan to issue in 2021, and then one in 2022. And so the 2021 projects are more solid right now, and I'll list them. Opening day collection for the Fort Bend branch. Then we have bilingual children's computers for the branches. And then we have update projects for Pike and Nora branches, as well as just general facility improvement projects like carpet replacement, painting, lighting upgrades, parking lot repavement. And so those will come to about 5.5 or 5.6 million. And the second bond issue will be for the same amount. We have some projects that we've identified, but that could change. We have solar panels to reduce the costs in our operating budget across the utilities. We have the Garfield Park meeting room. We need a generator for our server room. And then our learning curve needs a refresh. And so we had funding identified in our last bond issue to do a design, and we're working on starting that process now. And then we'll need the funding to kind of implement that project. Then we need a new door counter system, a more reliable door counter system. So those are some of the projects that we could fund with the second series of funds. And I'll ask Velvia to come up again and just talk through the cost of financing.
Before she comes up, just a quick question. You mentioned specifically Pike and Nora in terms of the fix-uppers.
Right.
What about some of the other branches that are a little bit older as well, in terms of like Colville or the ones that 38th Street? What about those branches? But you didn't mention those specifically.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. Those are some of the things that we could look at in this second bond issue. And we'll ask our facilities department to do an analysis of, because yeah, you're right, these smaller branches need some attention.
Thank you. That would be very much appreciated.
Again. Some of the same information is contained within this presentation, but we wanted to separate it because there are separate hearings for all of these projects. Oh, you're fine. This is the same information that was contained previously, just with the library's current outstanding indebtedness.
slide 3 that has a summary of the 2 issuances that are up for approval this evening. And we're looking at borrowing amounts of 5.575 million for both series of bonds with an estimated repayment term of 2 years each. The legal documents will allow for up to a 5-year repayment. We have included interest expense of a more conservative amount of 3% just for purposes of the legal documents. But with a 2-year repayment, looking at who knows where rates will be, but they will certainly be, our expectation is that they will definitely be lower than 3%. And again, these bonds will be issued keeping in line with the library's overall tax rate management strategy. Slide 4 then shows these 2 series of bonds then incorporated with the library's current outstanding indebtedness. And then the last slide shows that if all of the bonds that have been discussed this evening are approved and move forward, this is what the library's total overall debt picture would look like. That's on page 5. And it also shows the line there represents the estimated tax rate associated with those bonds. And the thing to also point out is that this also provides the library with flexibility to look at additional capital needs that it may need to consider down the road. So we're able to repay these bonds very quickly while also preserving the library's flexibility moving forward.
Any questions from the board? Thank you. Now, I now invite the public to comment on this proposal. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make a comment? I see none. I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion on closing the public hearing? Being none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Matada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Motion carries. The public hearing is adjourned and the regular meeting is reconvened. We move on to resolution 35-2021. Any further comments on this?
No, thank you. I don't have any other comments, but I would like Jeff to come up and explain again to you guys resolutions 35 through 38 so that you can.
Thank you, EJ. Good evening again. So these resolutions are very similar to the ones that you approved just for the Fort Bend Glendale project, except that because of their size, they don't have to have some of the parameters that are in those resolutions, and they don't have to have the 30-day waiting period after we approve the resolutions this evening. So the resolutions 35-2021 is for the 2021 project, conservation project. That is in the amount not to exceed $5,575,000, and for a term not to exceed 5 years. The interest cost is in the presentations. Resolution 36-2021 is for the 2022 conservation project with the same parameters. Resolution 37-2021 is the additional appropriation for the 2021 bond proceeds and interest rates on that not to exceed $5,575,000. And then resolution 38-2021 is the additional appropriation resolution for the 2022 bonds that will be issued with a maximum appropriation amount not to exceed $5,575,000. If you approve these resolutions this evening, we will immediately start the city county council approval process, since these don't have to have that 30-day waiting period. So we anticipate going to the council, getting these introduced in September, approved, or at least considered for approval in October, and then sell the bonds toward the end of October and close those hopefully before Thanksgiving. So these would be on a little faster track than will before then Glendale, just because we don't have to wait that 30 days. We might want to delay a little bit if we see that it's best to combine those, but you may want to go ahead and get those done. Since they're on a slightly shorter term, they may have an interest rate environment that would be more conducive to doing earlier rather than later in the fall of this year. So I'd be happy to answer the questions you may have regarding any of those resolutions.
What would really determine that earlier approach?
If we see for some reason that the Fort Bend Glendale has gotten delayed at the council for whatever reason, or if interest rates, we start to see them rising rather rapidly, which no one I think anticipates at this point, but that could be the case. There's not a real great need to get the cash in the door right away because some of these projects are not going to start until the beginning of next year. So we haven't outlaid a lot of cash for the 2021 project. But that may be another issue. If you start to have a need for the money earlier, then that might be a reason to slow that on faster track.
Additional questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, thank you so much, sir.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
We'll now take up resolution 35-2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that resolution? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman, Mr. Bixby, Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Motion carries. We move on to resolution 36-2021. Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on that resolution? Seeing none, can we have a call to roll, Angie?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby, Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
Motion carries. We move on to resolution 37-2021. Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
Approved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on that matter? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby, Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Tribble.
Motion carries. Move on to resolution 38-2021. Is there a motion to approve that resolution? Is there a second? Any discussion on that matter? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
38 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
EJ? You have the floor again.
Thank you. Our next resolution is resolution 39-2021. That is the resolution to adopt appropriations and tax rates for the 2022 budget. As you know, we had a public hearing on August 10th, and we presented to you all the details of the budget. So in this resolution, we just have the same details. We just have our total adopted or proposed budget for the rainy day fund, general fund, debt service fund, and the two debt service funds. We have our proposed tax levies as well as our proposed tax rate. And that is on page, PDF page 70. And we've gone through all the detail the last time, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
This is something you recommend.
Yes. And as I said previously, this is our advertised tax rate and levy. It's higher than what we will finally adopt. But we do this to be on the safe side in case there are any errors in the certified net assessed value.
Okay. Any questions or further comments from the board on this resolution? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 39-2021?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Machado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
Approved.
Judge Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble. Approved. Thank you.
All right, the next item is resolution 40-2021. This one is an item we bring to you every year. It's just a resolution making a statement that we won't exceed that 0.0318 in a combined debt service rate. This is just so that we can assure the council as well as help the DLGF try to work the budget to achieve that rate. So it just helps us in making sure that we're not going back and forth with DLGF in trying to achieve that rate. Any questions on that?
Any questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve resolution 4020-2021?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call to roll?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby, Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approve.
Greg Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Move on to resolution 41-2021. EJ.
Thank you. This is on PDF page 75. This is just a transfer resolution. It says transferring funds from the supply category to the other services and charges to cover the upgrade to Microsoft 365. We have it in our budget for 2022, but we wanted to go ahead and start that upgrade for staff in 2021. So we're asking for this transfer to achieve that.
From office supplies to computer services.
Correct.
The adverse consequences of doing that? As far as
No, because what's gonna happen is there was some planned PC refreshes that can wait. And so it's IT is determined that it's more important for them to go through this 365 than to do all of the planned.
any additional questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 41-2021?
Approved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion on the motion? Angie, can we have a call to roll, please?
Mr. Biederman,
Approved.
Mr. Bigsby,
Approved.
Dr. Murtada,
Approved.
Ms. Payne,
Approved.
Reverend Robinson,
Approve.
Greg Salinas,
Approved.
Ms. Tribble.
Approved.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
so
That's
much.
all.
Dr. Payne, anything further from your committee?
Is there anything further?
No, there is none. I'm so sorry.
No, I just want to make sure.
There is nothing
There's nothing on the
further
agenda, but I
for
want to
me.
make sure.
You sure of that?
Yes, I am sure. I have
Thank
taken
you
up enough
so
of your time.
Thank you. That's very important. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll move on to item 6, Diversity Policy and Human Resource Committee. Chair is Hope.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Diversity Policy and Human Resources Committee met on August 4th, with a focused agenda on the climate improvement process as proposed by Dr. Murtada. Notes from the meeting are included in the packet. During the meeting, council described concerns about the climate study being executed by a board member, specifically related to conflict of interest, the role of the governing body, contract protections for the library and board members. And council also had subsequent conversations with Dr. Murtada to discuss in further detail. Ultimately, council advises that the board will secure the best protection for the library by having this done with the contractual arrangement with the party providing these services. As a board, we have an obligation to move forward with the climate study and to make sure that it's done with the best interest of the library in mind. Everybody is aware that the board would approve the concept of the library performing a climate study. And the Diversity Policy and HR Committee has been tasked with spearheading the development of the proposals, recommendation to the full board, and overseeing implementation. We all understand the urgency of proceeding with the climate study. And with that urgency in mind, we will convene the Diversity Policy and HR Committee next week. Date is to be confirmed, pending checking members' calendars availability. It's my hope to have before our committee all relevant information about any parameters of any climate study proposal. The sooner that the committee has all the information it needs, the sooner it can make the recommendation to the board. We also understand the urgency with respect to the search for a new CEO, and the purview will also come within the committee. And it is my plan to start that search process also in the coming weeks. That concludes the report. Is there further question?
We do have resolution 42.
Oh, right. I'm sorry, I
2021.
forgot about that. Tisha Galarse, who is the acting and going to acting HR director, is here to talk about resolution 42. Good evening.
Welcome.
So I'm here to get the approval for the resolution 42-2021 for the reapproval for the personal leave of absence. We would like to reinstate the benefit of personal leave for parents that need to take off due to the COVID increase in case the school closes or they have to go online. So we would like to reinstate that. This was pre-approved back in and expired in May 31st, 2021, and we just like it for approval until December 31st, 2020.
Any questions from the board on resolution 42-2021? I hope we're requesting a motion. on this one.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 42? So, is there a second? Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, Angie, can we have a call roll?
Mr. Peterman,
Approved.
Mr. Bixby,
Approved.
Dr. Hurtado,
Approved.
Ms. Payne, Reverend Robinson,
I'm very sorry. Approved.
Des Salinas,
Approved.
and Ms. Chibble.
Motion carries. Thank you so much. Hope any other for the diversity? We'll move on to facilities committee. Chairs.
I have one comment I wanted to make.
Yes.
It's a very brief comment. The board had asked me to move forward with a climate improvement process. And I have a question that I would ask to be taken up by the committee as it meets next week. Why would the board ask for more details as to the design of the study, as to the design for the study, in which I supplied a great deal of detail, including timeline, cost, governance approaches. I spoke with legal in order to have an information of what not only were the risks, but also what were the ways that we might manage risks. And I would ask that the board respectfully convene an opportunity to talk about not only the processes that I have submitted, but to also discuss what the risk management issues are and ways that we might also avoid the risks. I think that's an important part of this process. I felt that when asked to give more guidance and more details respectfully by this board for a climate improvement process, I went about doing so. I even laid out a timeline in which I started meeting with different members of the board, as well as the staff, as well as community members, to move the process forward. And so I think out of regard and respect for that work that went into the planning and the subsequent submission of significant details, that work must be regarded as ones that I had submitted to the board, and working with staff members as well as community partners to advance this work.
If I may, Mr. President, the August 4th meeting was actually convened for that very purpose, and Dr. Hurtado declined to attend. I am happy to hear that information again next week. As a matter of fact, I called you about it today, and in that discussion, you said you didn't want to go any further.
I said that I did not want to meet with the diversity committee because this was asked to be a task force. I don't want to take up more time to discuss it. I'm asking that the committee discuss and share with the board broadly the legal ramifications of risk, as well as ways that we can risk manage. It's one thing to just discuss the risk, but what ways might we, from legal, get risk management addressed?
I think that certainly is something that needs to be looked at by the committee.
Thank you.
Is that? I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you're fine. My position is it belongs in HR, that committee. And there's two questions that we have to answer, or we have to ask ourselves from my perspective. One, how do we do this? Okay, not, and then who should do it? Okay, so then that should be, that the committee should be, or should get as much information as they can, and then submit their recommendations to the full board. And again, my only objective is to make sure that everybody that works for the library feels comfortable in participating in this survey. That's important. It just can't be one side or the other. It has to be everybody, or else it loses the effectiveness in my view. But again, of course, it needs to be looked at by the committee. But that's from my perspective, from what I've been told, to me, it just makes sense that it goes in the HR committee, to be honest with you. That's what makes sense. Chris?
Out of due respect, I want to respond to that.
Sure, of course.
When I submitted this process, not a singular study, and I made a distinct difference between a study and a climate improvement process. And the reason why I did that was because this is a long-term commitment to building capacity within the library for climate improvement. And so, like I said, I wanted to ask, not tied to me, but tied to the growing of capacity within the library to do its own work, while also respecting what was said earlier in terms of community engagement. Community is just as important in this climate improvement process. So I just wanted to ask, what are the risks, but also ways that we manage that risk? It is not a singular study.
And for somehow or another, the words got interchanged, and I apologize for that. The original motion was processed. And over time, reading the paper and stuff like that, so for some reason, I got it in my head, it was a climate study, but it's the words that you put forth was climate improvement process. I will acknowledge that, and I think some of us also have that, not confused, just interchange those words, but at least I know what you meant.
I appreciate it.
I was just saying, I think it's important that we, I guess, hear this at our next committee meeting, especially the things that you pointed out with some of the legal issues surrounding both the pros and cons for a board member doing the climate study. So I think that'll probably be covered in our next meeting, and then, like you said, we'll come out with a climate process.
And I declined to attend that meeting because this was advanced to the board, and the board approved of the climate improvement process. And I refused to have it marginalized and placed within a committee that was not discussed, and I withdrew respectfully, just as Hope has pointed out. I withdrew my motion at a prior meeting where I said I did not want to draw the committee or the board into a further discussion about whether or not it should be in a committee or not in a committee. I saw this as a process that the board must move forward on, and a task force which speaks to its work that all of the board is involved in, that all of the committees that are part of the Equity Council are involved in. I even laid out a plan for 12 members, including the Equity Council, including people from the community, including board members. And I wanted to make sure that I respectfully declined from it being marginalized into a committee, when in fact, it's not just about diversity alone. Climate improvement process reaches beyond a diversity call. It's not merely a policy piece. It is not merely HR. Climate and culture are not the same thing. There is a difference between organizational culture and organizational climate. And I asked of this board to do something different, to do something that was breaking the rules and policies and ways that we have done things for so long. Get an external body to come in and fix or share data and then tell us what we need to do. And hopefully the diversity, HR, and policy committee will take that seriously as a part of its charge.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to make it clear, this board is 100% behind doing a climate improvement process.
You got it.
All right.
But the issue is whether or not an external body is going to be involved also in addition together. And legal said that one of the main issues was contractual. And I had said, we will do this work for no cost whatsoever, except for the time of those individuals who commit to serving it. That was one of the first things that our legal counsel mentioned.
Presumably, I can make a recommendation that we get everything that Dr. Machado was saying here tonight, some of the issues with doing it internally, externally, a legal opinion prior to our meeting that we have on next week if possible.
I'm happy to recirculate some of the concerns that we have addressed. And contractual, just to be clear, contractual concerns are not just about compensation. And we had a call, Dr. Matata, about that. Some of the concerns related, they're not just board concerns, they're individual concerns, including the potential waiver of qualified immunity for a board member performing a direct personal services. So there are a variety of risks to this board, to the library as an organization, and to the individual board member who might be performing those services. I'm happy to recirculate those comments, and if there are questions related to those concerns or comments, I'd be happy to arrange time.
As well as the kinds of comments that will speak to risk management. How do we manage those risks? That's an important part that was shared with me when I spoke with your colleague as well, Robert.
Yeah.
And when I spoke, he also gave recommendations for risk management, not just the risk alone.
Right.
That's an important part of this discussion.
So yes, or you can get that out to the members of the HR committee.
Happy to.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to number 8, facilities committee. Chairman.
We didn't have any.
No meeting, so no report. All right, library foundation update, Reverend Robinson.
Thank you, Judge Salinas. Before I begin, I wanted to just express on behalf of Roberta Jaggers, the CEO of the Library Foundation. She wanted me to communicate to the board that she supports and welcomes the interim CEO, John Hellings, and that the Library Foundation continues to stand in support of this library, and that whatever the Library Foundation can do during this difficult time, to please reach out to them. And so she just wanted me to communicate that tonight to this board. Every month, the Library Foundation provides an update to the library board. The Library Foundation appreciates the library openness about the needs to assess and improve its internal culture. Thanks to our generous donors, we have begun investing in equity training for the library staff. We will continue to partner with the library on this work for the benefit of all employees and patrons. We are committed to the library's success. Registration is now open for Dr. Tyrone McKinley Freeman lecture on the recent book, Madam C.J. Walker's Gospel Giving, Black Women Philanthropic During Jim Crow. We hope that you can join us on Tuesday, September 14th at 6 p.m. for the first virtual event presented with the Center for Black Literature and Culture. For more information, please refer to the link that's in your board packet. We encourage you to share this program with within your network. The foundation thanks 117 donors who made gifts this last month. The following are top corporate and foundation contributors. And if you should have an opportunity to thank these donors, we would be grateful. Arthur Jordan Foundation, the Indianapolis Foundation Library Fund, RJE Business Interiors. This month, the Library Foundation is proud to provide more than $170,000 for library programs and initiatives. Examples of major initiatives supported include Salute to Black American Medical Heroes, Chromebook and Hotspot Lending, Center for Black Literature and Culture, IndyPL Historic Document Digitization, Judge, that ends my report for this evening.
Thank you so much. We'll now move on to item 9. Our interim as of September the 1st, John Helen, if you would mind just filling in for tonight on item 9.
Absolutely, thank you, Judge. So there's a single resolution under the report of the Chief Executive Officer. It's the fairly typical resolution about finances, personnel, and travel. One thing I did want to provide some context on, if you're interested in, just real briefly, you may have noticed there's a larger than average number of separations on the resolution today, so I just wanted to offer some context. You'll see the word sub beside the vast majority of those names. We are redoing the way we have traditionally done subs at IndyPL. We kind of paused the sub system in general when COVID hit. And I'll say that historically, the way subs have worked is, there's a big long list of names and a branch manager goes down the list and tries to find someone to work at central. That worked really well for some branches. Other branches, just to be frank, had difficulty getting subs to agree to come work there. So it got to be to the point where we figured, okay, we have this pause in COVID, we want to do it a little differently. So we've created a set of regional floater positions to fill the same need as the old sub pool used to do. So those positions are being filled right now. They haven't been filled yet. But that's why you see that long list. Technically, those are separations, but in reality, lots of those folks haven't pulled any hours for us since before COVID. So just wanted to offer that context for it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions as far as resolution 43? Is there a motion to approve resolution 43? So moved. There's a second.
Second.
Any further discussion on resolution 43?
There is a long list.
Yes. Yes. Any further discussion or comments? Angie, can we have a call to vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Peterman.
Approved.
Mr. Bixby. Dr. Mercado.
Approved.
Ms. Payne.
Approved.
Reverend Robinson.
Approve.
Judge Salinas.
Approved.
And Mr. Wolf.
Approved.
Thank you.
Motion carries. We do not have any unfinished business. We've done item 11. We come now to the discussion, item 12, further agenda items. This time is made available for discussion items not on the agenda, which there's of interest to those library board members and the opportunities given them to suggest items for inclusion in future board meetings. If anybody has any comments on that.
I wanted to ask John Helen if he would agree also, as our former CEO did, that the board members should be getting the same training, the racial equity training that the staff is getting. And so I wanted to offer that again. I will be sending the dates to everyone so that we go all the way up to June. So you've got a big selection. September 14th, 15th is our next training. So John said,
I would very much support that. I know I got a lot out of it. I'm sending my staff through it, so I can't recommend it highly enough.
appreciate that.
I thought it was on, but I'll check upon it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any further comments or suggestions from the board?
Maybe an update if they can for our next meeting as it pertains to the pages and their salaries.
Okay. And also, I think Mr. Torres wanted I don't know, Mr. Torres, did you ask for like whether they're in school or retired? Did you want to break down like that?
So if we consider doing a survey to see who exactly the pages are, for students, or retirees, or that kind of, so we can get a truer idea of who was actually
Any survey?
just kind of something.
The point that they can never reach part-time.
Yeah.
Or full-time status for that matter.
Okay. Good idea. Good idea what the numbers are and stuff. All right, our next meeting is September 27th. I'll ask a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Lot of response on that one. All right, all in favor, say aye. Folks,